We're real life sisters, Kay and Shi, and we real life want to be your sisters too. Welcome to the family. No takesies backsies. Now let's get on with the Kay and Shi Show. All right, next up on our destinations is the state of Florida, which is more than a state of being. It's a state of mind, man.
It is a state where you can visit. It is a state of mind indeed. And it is also the place where we have probably attended the most conferences, specifically the International Maxwell certification with our John Maxwell team family at the Orlando World Center Marriott. But we've also had the pleasure of attending some Tony Robbins conferences, our Date with Destiny conference, the Business Mastery conference that was there. And Kay here, I actually lived in Florida for like 15 months.
And as your sister, I feel safe in saying you're happier here. And
Yes.
I'm glad that you're not a Florida resident anymore. Maybe not the vibe for you in terms of living there permanently, but visiting Florida, we have done quite a bit. If you want to know anything about that World Center Marriott, Kay and I can tell you every nook and cranny of that space. We can even get you into the back hallways if you want, but we've gotten to travel to Florida for Disney. Of course, you heard about that in the first installment of this week, but for the most part, we have traveled for conferences. And so for us, Florida and conferences and events go hand in hand, which is one of the reasons why we love it.
Well, Florida was really built for large group gatherings, at least in the Orlando area for sure. And as we've gotten to know more about the state, the people there, and the way that it works, it's been really cool to see how it really ends up being a place of coming together for so many people because of that conference energy, right? When you have the trade shows of tens of thousands and, growth conferences in those same numbers, and every kind of conference under the sun gets housed in Florida. Most people have some form of experience with the state itself. And Shyla and I even were regaling just earlier today on an interesting experience we got to have in Miami.
Yeah, we've actually traveled to Miami Beach last summer. We got to have a few days there, which was a really interesting experience, and maybe one we'll profile at some other point. But getting to be in Miami was the most, I think, vibe that we've gotten to interact with when it comes to Florida. Because if you're in Florida and you're in conference life, you get to know the conference area really well, but you don't always necessarily get to know the vibe of a city. But in Miami, you don't have to get to know the vibe of the city because the vibe of the city gets to know you. It is deep, it is cultural, it is in your face, it is everywhere. There are people, there are different dialects, there are different colors, there are all kinds of different people and places and things to experience. And that was something that was really interesting for us. And then a few months after that, we got to go visit Del Rey, which is fairly close to Miami, but feel even that different vibe as well. One thing that we love about Florida, though, of course, is the tropical weather. And one of the most interesting facts about Florida is that it is the flattest state, even though it is humongous, out of all of the states. In fact, Kay, what is the tallest mountain there?
The tallest mountain is actually a landfill. So if you are wondering where the mountains in Florida are, just look for giant piles of trash and you will find them. But being a mountainous person who grew up around mountains, who uses mountains as a means of figuring out what direction I'm going and where I am, it was definitely difficult living there for the time that we did without having mountains. But one thing that Florida does have are amazing cloud formations. So even if you don't have mountains of the land, you've got mountains of the sky.
Ooh, mountains of the sky. I like that. Well, speaking of mountains of the sky, that's a great way to describe some of the structures we get to see in the final destination that we're bringing forward to you, and probably our favorite trip of all time. So make sure you tune in for the last installment when we share our most recent magical trip to New York City.